Wouldn't it be so fun to travel back in time?
That'd be amazing!
Hey, look at that door. I wonder what's inside.
The Middle Ages by Nadia, Colin, and Yi Chen.
The Middle Ages were the ketchup and mustard of the whole scheme of time. They were between the fall of Rome and the Renaissance.
As an overview of the Middle Ages was a period of time in Europe between 1066 AD and 1485 AD. They are called the Middle Ages because they were the middle period between the fall of the Roman Empire and the start of the Renaissance period. The Middle Ages were a time of power for the Church which the Crusades and Inquisition helped support. The daily life of someone in the Middle Ages depended greatly on where they were in the feudal system. Jobs and occupation largely determined the quality of the life and medicine, entertainment, and guilds such as peasant, lord, princess, king, nobles, and lords. In the Middle Ages, feudalism was based on exchange of land for military service. King William the Conqueror used feudalism as a reward to Norman supporters with English lands to help the conquest of England and the king during war. In the Middle Ages, feudalism was based on exchange of land for military service.
The daily life of a peasant was hard. They had labor on lord's land for a few days each week. The women peasants also lived a hard life. They were expected to help their husband with daily chores, such as cooking daily meals and doing other duties.
Peasants had to wake up as early as 3 a.m. and work until dusk on tasks like reaping, sowing, plowing, binding and thatching, and haymaking. Now, I will take us back in time to discover the religion of the Middle Ages. It was dominated by the Catholic religion. The only recognized religion was Christianity. Lives of the medieval people were dominated by the church, no matter social class. Christianity began among a small group of Jews. It was seen as a threat to the Roman Empire, as Christians refused to worship the Roman gods or emperor. Early Christians were persecuted. During the reign of Emperor Constantine, this ended. He legalized Christianity, and Constantine the Great proclaimed himself Emperor of Christians. This is when Christianity became the official religion of Roman Empire instead of worshiping the many gods. Religion of the Dark Ages. The Roman Empire begins to fall in the 5th century. German tribes conquered Rome, which marked the beginning of the Dark Ages. During this era, the growth and the power of the Christian church was referred to as Catholic. The Catholic Church had its own laws, lands, and taxes. The church collected taxes. As its wealth grew, so did the power of the church. This is how it was able to influence the kings and rulers of Europe. Catholic was the only accepted religion.
Middle Ages monks. Monks were people who chose to live a life devoted to God. Any person, rich or poor, could become a medieval monk. However, by becoming a monk, you had to follow very strict rules. Monks could not own any property. They could not go beyond the monastery walls without abbot's consent. They could not even receive letters from home. Monasteries were communities that only relied on themselves for everything they needed. Monks lived in these communities. These communities produced all the food they needed inside or close to the walls of the monastery. They rarely needed to leave the safe monastery walls for any other reason. The daily life of monks was based on the 3 vows: the vow of poverty, the vow of chastity, and the vow of obedience. The day-to-day life of a monk concerned with things like worshipping and reading. They also worked daily. The medieval monks' lives were very busy.
The Crusades were a series of war between 1096 AD and 1272 AD that were launched against the Islamic people that had taken over the city of Jerusalem. This was a holy city for both religious and each faith wanted control over it. The first Crusades were started by Pope Urban II when he commissioned Peter the Hermit to preach for the Crusades. He told people that the city of Jerusalem had been taken over by the Islamic people and Christians must fight to get it back. This popularized the idea of the Crusades and was the fire that started the 9 Wars. During this time, the church gained power and control over people who were willing to fight for God. The Crusades did not accomplish their main goal, but gave the church a lot more authority and control. Now came a time of epidemic, a widespread of disease that swept through Europe from 1347 to 1452. This was the Plague, or the Black Death. During those 6 years, disease killed millions of people and drastically altered the lifestyle of people living in Europe. The Black Plague was already festering in China for decades before it was introduced into Europe. The disease was brought into medieval Europe on an Italian trading ship through Sicily in October of 1347. The city was immediately cordoned off, but the disease had already spread. The disease spread rapidly, getting as far north as England, causing death and destruction in its wake. The bubonic plague spread by fleas and rats. In this manner, it was dormant in the winter, while the insects and rodents died and ravaged the population in the summer. Doctors refused to treat patients with the disease. Fathers abandoned sons because of it. There were constant shortages of workers because of the toll of the disease on the population of Europe. After the initial 6-year-long epidemic, small outbreaks still occurred, going on for centuries more. The plague never really disappeared until the 1600s. During the 6 years of the epidemic, over 25 million people died as a result of the disease. This was 1/3 of Europe's population at the time. The plague had so many lasting effects. It induced peasant revolts. For one, they wanted higher wages due to a lack of workers. It also created political turmoil and the questioning of the church. The turmoil surrounding the church was spurred on by religious questioning. This in turn was spurred on by unanswered prayers begging for the end of the plague. This turmoil eventually led to the medieval Inquisition. Now, let's go meet Charlemagne, or Charles the Great. He was king of the Franks from 768 until he died. He expanded the Frank kingdom into an empire that incorporated a lot of West and Central Europe. He conquered Italy and crowned Augustus by Pope Leo III. He associated himself with the Western Europe for the first time since the Romans and Carolingian Renaissance, Austria, and Hungary. The Avars are eventually destroyed as a cultural entity. Carolingian Renaissance, art, religion, and culture through the medium of the Catholic Church occurred. Charlemagne defined Western Europe in the Middle Ages with his foreign conquests and internal reforms. He is seen by many as a founding father of French and German monarchies, and also the father of Europe. His empire had united most of Western Europe for the first time since the Romans, and Carolingian Renaissance encouraged formation of common European identity.
The Great Schism was a split in the Catholic Church. It resulted in a period of time where there were 2 popes in power at the same time. This resulted in a religious crisis in Europe. In reality, there were actually 2 schisms, the East-West Schism and the West Schism. The East-West Schism was the commonly known split between the Eastern Orthodox Church and the Roman Catholic Church that were the east and west sides of Europe, respectively. There was schism was a smaller split within the Roman Catholic Church that lasted from 1378 AD to 1417 AD. These splits eventually led to the fall of Constantinople.
Does anyone know what the document forced upon King John to sign by various barons was? The document that was forced upon the king, written up by various lords and barons. The document that greatly limited his power. This was the Magna Carta. The majority of the document was concerned with the misuse of power by the royal officials. Some of the documents were simply old laws, restated, while others were new laws entirely. The Great Charter bears many similarities to the Declaration of Independence in that they both invoked trial by jury and limited taxes. It did many other things like separate the church from the state and standardize measures. The main effect of the Magna Carta was the limiting of the king's power. However, it had many more subtle effects. The Magna Carta was one of the contributing factors to America's eventual democracy. King John did not abide by the Magna Carta, and it led to the Barons' War. This led to the overthrowing of King John. The Inquisition was a policy instated by the church that was used to find and punish people not obeying the church. This gave the church massive power, even more over the people. There were many different inquisitions in different regions. The Spanish Inquisition is the most famous of these, and that's what we'll look into first. The Spanish Inquisition, as the name implies, occurred in Spain. It was presided over by a grand inquisitor and the High Council, who persecuted people such as religious converts from Judaism and Islam. Other people, like mystics, were also persecuted. Roman Inquisition. Unlike the Spanish Inquisition, the name Roman is a misnomer. The Roman Inquisition occurred in medieval Italy, which was the original place of the Roman Empire, which fell before the Middle Ages. The Roman Inquisition and Spanish Inquisition are similar on the front that they both tried heretics and punished them. The trials, on the other hand, were more fair than the ones held in Spain, and generally people being tried were treated less harshly. The Roman Inquisition frequently let people with life sentences go on parole after 3 years, or simply issued house arrest as they didn't have enough room for the prisoners.
The Renaissance was not part of the Middle Ages. The Renaissance signified the end of the Middle Ages. The knight fell out of use, as did castles, with the introduction of gunpowder into Europe, and thus began a new period in history.
Finally back home. So much learned in 20 minutes. I wonder where Colin is. What year is it? I feel like I've traveled so far and so long. Hey, you over there. What year is it?
1092.
No, it can't